Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you, wherever you are based in. I'm Jagannath Panda, head of the Stockholm South Asian and Indo-Pacific Affairs at the Institute for Security and Development Policy. Welcome to this webinar in collaboration with the Embassy of India in Sweden. We are privileged to partner with the Embassy of India to have this series of webinars, and these webinars is first in the series. We will have the second and third round in the next couple of days. We are today privileged to have a fine set of experts to discuss about the future of India-Sweden partnerships for the next 1 decade. But before I begin, let me thank the Embassy of India in Stockholm to collaborate with ISDP, not only for this webinar, but also for the project. The project that we are collaborating with each other is about India-Sweden ties and how India-Sweden ties could be a gateway for greater India-Nordic engagement. We are privileged to have not only the support of Embassy of India here, but also today very honored and privileged to have His Excellency Mr. Rakesh Kumar Tiwari, the Charge d'Affaires with us. Mr. Tiwari is a seasoned diplomat, and he's a senior diplomat posted here at the Embassy of India. Prior to coming to Sweden, he served as the Undersecretary at the BIMSTEC division in the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi. And he was in charge from 2022 to March 2023. He previously posted at the Embassy of India in Myanmar for 2.5 years. And I must say that he's proficient in Burmese language and has really studied and monitored the developments in Burma for a long time. As part of his personal interest and in alignment with Indian culture, Mr. Tiwari conducted research on linguistic evolution of Burmese language, tracing its development from ancient Sanskrit through Pali. We are privileged to have you, Mr. Tiwari, and thank you very much for agreeing to speak in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Panda. Thank you for your introduction. Thank you for welcoming us.
Then we will have our director, Dr. Niklas Sundström, who is unfortunately unable to join us because of some personal reasons, but he has wished us through a video recording. We will play his message today here after once Mr. Tiwari delivered his inaugural remarks. Then we have a fantastic lineup of 3 speakers today to discuss about the future of India-Sweden relations. We have Dr. Lars Bargö. He is a former Swedish ambassador to Japan. He was posted in Japan from 2011 to 2014. And he's also a former Swedish ambassador to South Korea, and he was posted there from 2006 to 2011. Dr. Bargö holds a PhD in Japanese studies from the University of Stockholm, and is proficient in Japanese language. He graduated from Uppsala University in 1972 with a major in sinology. In 72 to 76, he was a repeat of a Matsuboro scholar at the Kyoto University. As a diplomat, Ambassador Bargö has returned to Japan 4 times, but also he has served in Libya, Lithuania, and the United States. ISDP is really fortunate to have Ambassador Bargö's guidance from time to time, and we are privileged to have his presence today in this webinar, and he is going to share a Swedish experience here today with us. Then we have Ms. Lena Becker. Ms. Becker actually is a global leader with 30 years of experience at the international level. She is well known in India's strategic circuit. In the Swedish government, she was the enforcement director. For many years, she was the chairwoman for the high-level government think tanks for all the EU countries, including in many high tables across the Europe. She was also in charge of many delegations, and also particularly taking interest in terms of academic collaborations to non-governmental organizational level collaboration between India and Sweden. We are very fortunate to have you And Ms. Baker actually has a very close collaborations with the business enterprises on both sides, from Indian side as well as from the Swedish side. So we are very fortunate to have you, Ms. Baker. Welcome to this webinar. Then last but not least, we have Dr. Pooja Bhatt, a fine expert on maritime affairs. She is currently an associate professor at the Jindal School of International Affairs at the Jindal Global University in India. She's also the South Asia Visiting Fellow in 2025 at the Stimson Center in Washington, D.C. She's the author of the book, Nine Dash Line, Deciphering the South China Sea Conundrum, which is republished by Routledge. And she has plenty of experience. She has worked as a consultant with the Policy Planning and Research Division at the Ministry of External Affairs in India. You could read her write-ups and speaking notes in various social media and online platforms. Welcome to you, Dr. Bhatt. We are privileged to have you. And then here about myself a little bit, I head the Indo-Pacific Center. Fortunate to have a excellent team colleagues here from ISDP. In the background, we have Ms. Ayana Armuth, who is our outreach coordinator. Then I have my excellent team colleagues here, Ms. Maria, Mr. Toby, and Ms. Julia to help us. So without further delay, let me start this webinar. This webinar is a part of our broader project on India-Sweden relations with the collaboration of Embassy of India. Just to start the note with a positive note, I think when we look at India-Sweden relations, I think more from a scholarly point of view, I could assure by telling you that India and Sweden are actually connected with each other at three structural levels. One is at the bilateral level. The second one is through the Nordic level, India and Nordic level. And the third is at the India and EU level. That's the kind of engagement we are having here today. And there is already good momentum is building up between India and Sweden. And thanks to the Embassy of India here, and particularly to our seasoned diplomats like Mr. Tiwari, who has worked quite hard to promote this relationship. But at the same time, what we are seeing, there is a continuous political change happening at the EU and at the global level. So to what extent India and Sweden could accommodate this changing political environment in their partnerships? Can this relationship really emerge into become a credible partnership in times to come? And what should be the crux of this partnership in times to come? Can this India-Sweden partnership be a kind of example, a role model for the India-Nordic stronger engagement? So in order to discuss some of these issues, today's webinar will be discussing about the changing political perceptions. So Ambassador Lars Bhargava will bring his rich diplomatic experience to share with us about how Sweden is looking at India and the changing turf in Swedish foreign policy. Then Ms. Lena Baker will be sharing about how India and Sweden could collaborate at the practical level, mostly at the non-governmental level. Then Dr. Pooja Bhatt will be sharing about mostly at the maritime sector, particularly factoring the security and defense issues between India and Sweden. But before that, let me welcome Mr. Tiwari to deliver his inaugural remarks, and then we'll start the proceedings. Over to you, Mr. Tiwari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Panda. Namaskar, good evening, and good afternoon. All the esteemed guests, respected speakers, and friends. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar, Forging the Future India-Sweden Partnership for the Next Decade. A warm welcome to our distinguished speakers joining us from different parts of the world, bringing valuable perspective to this discussion and this webinar. We are honored to organize this event in collaboration with ISDP and its team. India and Sweden share a deep and dynamic partnership rooted in our shared value of democracy, innovation, and sustainability. Over the years, our collaboration has expanded across trade, green technology, defense, and emerging sectors such as artificial intelligence and space. As we navigate the challenge of a changing global landscape in modern era and nowadays, it is vital to explore new opportunities for deeper cooperation, whether in strengthening economic ties, fostering climate solution, or enhancing security partnership. For today's discussion, I hope it will provide a valuable insight into how we can build a future-ready partnership, ensuring long-term strategic collaboration between India and Sweden. I look forward to engaging exchange of ideas in today's discussion, and thank you all for being part of this important dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your remarks. And I think your remarks really opens up the discussion today. The areas you covered, particularly about innovation, sustainability, defense, artificial intelligence, space, and other areas. I'm sure today's seminar and also the next two webinars will cover some of these areas of discussion. Before we invite all the three speakers, may I request our team to play our director's message for this webinar and for our collaborations.
My name is Niklas Sandström, and I'm heading the Institute for Security and Development Policy in Stockholm. My deepest apologies for not being able to attend in person, but I'm looking forward to see the recordings of these wonderful events that is coming up on India and Sweden relations. And I would like to first thank the Indian Embassy in Stockholm for the generous support for both the webinars and the actual physical event we're going to have, and also to the Center of South Asian and Indo-Pacific Studies, and Dr. Jagannath Panda for the exquisite arrangement of this event. Sweden-India ties is growing so much in importance nowadays, where we have seen much more tense relations globally. We have a more isolationist China, or more isolationist United States. And there's a growing need for improved relations among like-minded states. And I think India and Sweden share a lot of commonalities, even if, of course, we also share some different perceptions on sectors of Russia. But I remain very optimistic, and I think the events that we will hold here will prove that there are a great deal of potential in strengthening the relations between India and Sweden. And with that, I would like to wish these events great success, and I think that this will improve the academic cooperation between India and Sweden, but also maybe to help to strengthen the relations over time. So thank you and good luck with these events.
That was excellent, and we're privileged to have this message from Dr. Sundström, who has been quite supportive, not only about this project, but also about our research on India. So in ISDP, we established this center 3 years back on South Asia, where we are focusing a lot about India. So, and he has been quite keen in terms of promoting the relationship between not only Indian Embassy and ISDP, but also between India and Sweden. With this note, let me now invite the three speakers for today's webinar to deliver their remarks. So I'll first invite Ambassador Bargo to share his presentation, maybe 15 minutes to you.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be asked to say a few words. And I'm looking forward to the discussion that might follow our presentations. But before using my PowerPoint presentation, let me just look at the future of Sweden-India relations by looking at the past. I did some research, and I found an article in a newspaper in Sweden in 1885. It was published on the last day of December in 1885, and it really illustrates the way we have been looking at India for so many years. And I'm very happy to say that finally, in Sweden, we now view India as a very modern country, an advanced country in many respects. And we are finally getting rid of the old way of enhancing ourselves and looking at India as a very exotic, but very much behind us in development. Let me just, I did a translation of this small article, and it shows the view that so many of us Swedes had of India over the years, and this actually influenced our policies. So I think it's quite important to note what the newspaper in 1885 said, and it quotes a lecture that a Swedish missionary, held in the district of, or the region of Småland in Sweden. And the missionary, according to the newspaper, said that Hindus considered it as a grave sin to kill. Some of this might be true. Some of this is probably exaggerated in order to underline the missionary's mission. He said that the Hindus considered it a grave sin to kill animals and eat meat. They also refused to eat anything that had been touched by Europeans and could not eat in front of a Westerner. Those who had sinned were ordered to do penance. Making a pilgrimage to the Ganges River was one way. Those who drank from the river's water were forgiven for 200 sins, while those who bathed in the holy water could count on having done penance for no less than 1,000 sins. The Hindus believed, the missionary said, that the Ganges originated in heaven, and therefore considered that nothing could be better than bathing and dying in its waves. The pilgrimage, this, of course, everyone found very, very, very strange. The pilgrimage were often dangerous, and not half of the pilgrims returned home, the missionary said. Among the Hindus, it was common for those who had a bad conscience to try to cure it by all sorts of tortures and self-tortures. The missionary said, for example, some people hang themselves from a tree with their heads down, swinging back and forth over a fire fed by dried cow dung. Anyone who did such a thing could be sure of winning thousands of admirers, the missionary assured. He believed that this showed that in the depths of the pagan soul, there is a need for reconciliation and reparation. And then he goes on and explains how women are treated, and he concluded by saying that all women in Sweden had 100 times better situation than their sisters in India. And the missionary ended his lecture by talking about the hardships that awaited Europeans who wanted to travel to India. He spoke of the severe heat, the rains, and the difficulties of making oneself understood. He also told about the wild animals that were often dangerous. This is something that was repeated again and again. He himself had experienced a cobra entering his house and lying on his chest while he was reading. Fortunately, he managed to beat it away with his hand before it bit him. He concluded his lecture by saying that he had good hope that light would increasingly penetrate the dark land of India, of course, by his missionary duties. So this view of India as being a very dangerous, very strange place, and in need of illumination was something that actually we have to recognize influenced our way of looking at India. Now I can start with the PowerPoint presentation and just a few notes or a few things that I can point out on our modern relationship. Let's see if I will go and switch to the PowerPoint and use the first picture there. stating that the present situation of the Sweden-India bilateral relations have been modernized, and it's been extensive since India's independence in 1947. And of course, our diplomatic relations were established the year after in 1948. But perhaps influenced by the missionary view, India has become one of Sweden's first recipients of the development aid in 1953. This was phased out in 2013. And today we have a broad relationship and a growing cooperation on R&D, not least. I'll go to the next picture and just note that Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Sweden in 2018. I think this was quite important. And we also signed a joint action plan and a bilateral innovation partnership. In 2019, we had a state visit from Sweden to India. And of course, the King and the Queen were accompanied by several cabinet ministers and industry leaders. These state visits sometimes are considered to be just formality, but I think in this case, it was actually quite important. And in 2023, the prime ministers met in connection with the COP28 in Dubai. And in recent years, Sweden and India, of course, have signed a number of bilateral cooperation agreements in areas such as innovation, technical and scientific cooperation, defense, health, environment, renewable energy, and sustainable urban development. I'll go to the next picture. And when one uses PowerPoint presentations, one shouldn't put too many words in the pictures, but I'm sorry I've done that. But let me just state that the presence of Swedish companies in the country goes back, in India, goes back a long way. And the first Swedish corporate investment was made as early as the 1920s. India's strong economic growth and large domestic market make the country an increasingly important trading partner for Swedish companies. Trade between Sweden and India has increased significantly in the recent years, and a growing number of Swedish companies have established themselves in India. I think it's not unfair to even talk about a boom, an India boom among Swedish entrepreneurs. In 2024, the number of companies was approximately, Swedish companies in India was approximately 280, which together directly employ approximately 220,000 people in India. More and more Indian companies are also making investments in Sweden. This has been noted, especially in the last few years, with many IT specialists coming to Sweden and actually helping us in our development. Further, there's a strong interest in the business community in Sweden for the Indian market, and therefore the Swedish India Business Council was established in 2003, and a few years later, in 2007, there was a Swedish Chamber of Commerce formed in India. In 2012, we expanded our diplomatic presence by opening a consulate general in Mumbai. And of course, Business Sweden has offices in New Delhi and Bangalore, and also is opening an office in Mumbai. In 2016, a joint business council between Sweden and India and the India-Sweden Business Leaders Roundtable was launched. If you look at bilateral trade, the next picture, it is very easy to conclude that there's an enormous potential that we have still not used. I think the bilateral trade will grow at a very fast pace in the coming years. Sweden's export to India grew from 12.7 billion Swedish kroner in 2019 to 22 billion in 2024. But although the growth was impressive, it only constitutes 1.1% of our total export. So there's an enormous potential there. Sweden's import from India grew from 7.3 billion in 2019 to 13.5 billion in 2024. Again, this is only 0.7% of our total import. And the next picture shows that from the export from Sweden consisted mainly of chemicals, manufactured goods, and articles. Of course, paper and pulp is very important as part of that. And it was constituted an increase by 22% compared to the year before. Crude materials and mineral fuels were also exported, and there it was a decrease by 6.5%. I think this was just an exception to the development, and I think that it will continue to grow. Import from India, interestingly enough, consists about the same, has the same structure more or less than the other way. Chemicals, manufactured goods, and articles constitute 92%, and this is an increase from 2023 by 25%. And crude materials and mineral fuels constitute 4.4%, and this is actually a decrease. Again, I think it just depends on the market fluctuations by 53% compared to the year before. When you look at trade in services in the next picture, you can see that the import from India in 2024 was worth 25.6 billion. And this is an enormous increase from 2010 and also 2020. 2020 was 4.5 billion. And our export to India is about half of the import in trade and services, 12.3 billion. And again, it has been constituted a great part of our export, but it is not growing in the same way as our import of trade and services. And of course, when you look at Sweden-India relations, you also have to do it in the context of the EU-India relations. And it's interesting to note the roadmap that was adopted in 2020 between India and the EU. And I think this also reflects very much the way that we should act and the way we should look at India and our relationship with India, because of course we are part of the European Union, and we work very much in concert with our European Union partners. But it's interesting to note what it said in the roadmap. It said, in a complex international environment, the European Union and the Republic of India, both unions of diversity, sharing values of democracy, rule of law, and human rights, are equally convinced of the necessity to preserve the rules-based international order and effective multilateralism. The EU and India have a common interest in each other's security, prosperity, and sustainable development. They can contribute jointly to a safer, cleaner, and more stable world. I think this, with the Swedish government, of course, is also behind, and it reflects, I think, the way that we look at India, the way that we cooperate with India, and the way forward, simply put. If the roadmap that I just quoted consisted of some 118 different bullet points, and one can quote many of them, but I find it very interesting to mention a few that I think are specifically important for the Sweden-India relationship. In foreign policy and security, I think it's of course natural and necessary to have increase our number of seminars and visits, mutual visits, maybe more, even state visits or government visits, and expand the dialogue on various topics, and also enhance exchanges in multilateral fora, to use the multilateral fora for bilateral meetings. I think this is something that can actually move things forward in a very constructive way. And of course, on our table is the ways that we would like to work against terrorism and radicalization and money laundering. So this is quite important, I think, also for the both governments. Human rights, again, I think we can use international fora for bilateral discussions and discussions behind the corridor, or in the corridor, so to speak, but also, of course, working together, sharing our the values that we underline in furthering our discussions. Climate change and clean energy, I think we have the same view, and we can really cooperate. The next picture, I underlined the information and communications technology, which is so important for both of us. And we have joint efforts to promote an open, free, stable, and secure cyberspace. And we can also increase cooperation in cybersecurity. We can also promote common approaches and standards for digital transformation of industry and society. We're already doing that to a certain extent. We could do more. And then when it comes to transport as one example, of course, electrical charging infrastructures will increasingly be very important. And vehicles also, electric vehicles will be very important. So I think we'll see more of that when it comes both to export, import, and also cooperation. And then health-related issues, I think, is an area where we can work together more. Again, artificial intelligence. It's so important to share knowledge and expertise. And we can work specifically today when we see worrying trends emanating from Washington, working against multilateralism. I think that both Sweden and India could share the view that we should enhance cooperation in the United Nations and other multilateral fora. Also, very important is that our parliamentarians meet more often, visit each other more often, and discuss common values and measures more often. Again, another multilateral forum that is quite important is within the organization of WTO, and we need to work together in maintaining and strengthening a rule-based multilateral trading system, specifically today with the challenges that I mentioned. And again, another field of potential cooperation is the protection of living marine resources. I think this concludes my PowerPoint presentation and my presentation, and I'm sorry if I spoke a bit, used too many minutes, but I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ambassador Vargo. I think those were very useful remarks, and I think you have covered a wide range of areas, particularly from foreign policy point of view, how India and Sweden could actually embrace to this changing geopolitical order. But yes, the areas you covered, climate change, IT, health, transportation, artificial intelligence, including platforms like effective multilateralism. These are areas where both the countries should look forward to collaborate more intensely. We will come back to you with comments and questions in the second round. But now let me invite Ms. Lena Barker. Over to you for 15 minutes of your speech.
Thank you. Honorable guests, Honorable Chargé d'Affaires, Mr. Rakesh, and friends. It's a pleasure to be here today to discuss the future of Sweden-India partnership. India is a country that I have been in for the last 25 years. And I believe that everybody who comes to India, they get India in their hearts, and that is for life. I would like to also warm thank you, Institute for Security and Development Policy, for arranging this very important webinar. And I would love to give Mr. Rakesh his fantastic job that you're doing to bring our countries together. Over the past decades, our nations have built strong economic, technological, and cultural ties. We share much more than we believe that we do. But the real question is, what comes next? How do we elevate our partnership to new heights? Today, I would like to explore 5 key areas where Sweden and India can create lasting impact together: trade, economic growth, innovation and technology, sustainability, talent exchange, and strategic cooperation. The next decade holds great promises, and together we can shape a future of shared success. Our partnership is already built on a strong foundation. Over 280 Swedish companies operate in India, providing jobs and contributing to economic growth. At the same time, Indian businesses are expanding into Sweden. The Indian diaspora is growing faster than any other countries in the Swedish economy. At the same time, Indian businesses expanding to Sweden, bringing innovation and investments. Our trade relations are growing steadily, but the potential is much greater than we do today. The next 10 years will be about deepening these ties, not only increasing trade, but building long-term strategic cooperation that benefit both economies. I'm thinking make in India, make in Sweden, or make in the Nordics. Sweden and India are natural economic partners. Sweden has expertise in high-tech manufacturing, green economy, and the industry, while India is one of the fastest growing markets in the world, with fantastic startup ecosystem and an expanding middle class. I can see, for example, that the knowledge here in Sweden could increase much more than it is today about India. Mr. Ambassador, he also mentioned in his speech, I tell people here in Sweden that, do you know that India have a space program? And they did this space program to the South Pole that nobody had done to the moon. And what is amazing, they did it for the same cost as it is to create a official government swimming pool in the north of Sweden. And then people become totally silent and they say to me, we didn't know this. And then they start to be really interested. Imagine a future where Swedish innovation in clean energy powers Indian cities, or Indian fintech solutions transform the whole Swedish banking system, where opportunities are within reach, and the next decade is our time to seize them. What I have found out during all these years is that innovation is at the heart of both Sweden and India. India is a fantastic country of entrepreneurs and innovation. Sweden too. Sweden is a global leader in research and development, from telecom industry to sustainability solutions. India, on the other hand, has one of the most dynamic digital economies in the world. India can learn very much from Sweden, and Sweden can learn very much from India. By working together, we can lead the next wave of tech transformation. we can see that 1 + 1 will not be 2. Or we can create a Sweden-India cooperation to make it 11. We can together create something new for the world. Swedish companies can leverage India's vast pool of skilled tech professionals, while Indian startups can benefit from Sweden's cutting-edge research and business-friendly environment. For example, in AI, we are good in technology in Sweden, but India is even better than we are. We have much to learn from you. Digital healthcare, you can imagine the Swedish digital healthcare if we could support the development of 1.5 billion people in India. Or smart cities, it's another example. Our partnership can create solutions that benefit not just 2 nations or the Nordics. It can change the whole world. Perhaps the most exciting area of the partnerships is sustainability. Sweden is committed to become climate neutral by 2045, and India has set up ambitious renewable energy targets. What happens in India will change the world. Together, we are pioneering green solutions from large-scale solar and wind energy projects to next generation's battery technologies. Imagine Swedish electric buses running in the Indian cities. I have met my ministers of transports in the states of India myself, and this is what they would like to have, the cleaner air. Or Indian produced hydrogen energy being used to power Swedish industries. We can turn waste to green energy. For a circular economy solution with education system, create new jobs in India, like the Swedish company Valvet could do. By combining Swedish expertise in green technology with India's ability to scale solutions, we can set a global standard for sustainable development. A partnership is not just about trade and technology, it's about people. One of the greatest strengths of India is the young ones and the highly skilled workforce. India has the most well-educated people per GDP in the world. At the same time, Sweden faces a growing demand of skilled professionals, particularly in IT, engineering, healthcare as nurses and doctors. This is where cooperation can be and really make real difference. Expanding students' exchange programs, research partnerships, and talent mobility agreements will be essential for the future. Imagine thousands of Indian engineers and healthcare professionals contributing to Swedish economy while Swedish universities train the next generation of global leaders. This is not just a possibility, it is critical for our shared success. I started to know India 25 years ago when I was involved to create Hand in Hand, the NGO, who support the poorest people in India with microcredits and to help them to start small businesses, micro businesses. I can see a huge potential also in the cooperation of NGO sector from the Nordics, Sweden to India. Think if we should start an education system to the trainers or the young people or the children in sustainability and innovation. We could move the world with that. By fostering government-to-government cooperation, we create an environment where business and individual can grow. This is the kind of strategic partnership that will define the next decade. I believe in dialogues. We sit to start to understand each other, to build the bridges, where what we do today is one important thing. The free trade agreement between India and the EU will be very important. They started 18 years ago to discuss this, and now they have the ambition to end it in the end of this year. The visit from the European Commission was very clear. This is what they want. And nobody can be happier than our economies in this, I believe. So where do we go from here? The next 10 years present a tremendous opportunity for Sweden, the Nordics, and India to create something fantastic together. For business, now is the time to form new partnerships and invest in joint ventures. For universities, now is the time to expand student exchange and research cooperations. and to start with talent attraction. For NGOs, now is the right time to really do concrete action between our countries. For governments, now it's the time to strengthen policies that facilitate trade, innovation, and sustainability. But beyond policies and investments, this is just about a mindset on cooperation, innovation, and trust. The Swedish-India partnership is not just about economic opportunity. It is about to shape a better, more sustainable, and more innovative future for the world. Together, we will make the next decade as the most successful one yet. There are three choices. You can stay at the station and see the train leaving. You can join the train, or you can choose to drive the train. Let us just not imagine the future, let us build it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Becker, for that excellent speech. And I think I do agree with you that when you said we need to really have a much more serious and collaborative people-to-people exchange, covering areas, high-skilled workforce, IT, engineering, health. There is a ground level requirement of how India could provide assistance when it comes to nurse, doctors, and many research and university collaborations, academic collaborations. We'll come back to you with comments and questions in the next round, but last but not least, Dr. Pooja Bhatt, over to you for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Panda, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from. Firstly, I would like to thank ISDP for having me and to allow me to speak my thoughts on India-Sweden bilateral relations. I study maritime relations, maritime geopolitics. So my viewpoints on India-Sweden relations come from the understanding of maritime relations. And the previous speakers have set the stage of various areas where India and Sweden can come together. And here I would want to make my case that it is in the maritime domain that both countries would find most complementarities with each other. And it's in the maritime domain that both countries can work together in next decade or so to have fruitful relationship. So this is the starting pitch for my talk. And in next 15 minutes, I would want to make this case, having stated three major arguments. So before I make those arguments, I would agree with my previous speakers who mentioned that there is a huge scope in India-Sweden relationship, and everyone agrees that our relationship has come quite a far from where we started in last decade or so. There is Swedish as an economy, as a manufacturing export-based economy. India aims to become one. We have complementarities when it comes to green and clean technologies, defense manufacturing, innovation-based ecosystems. So these are some of the foundations which are already there. My argument is that it is in the Indo-Pacific domain where Sweden and India should look into more to have these objectives to be met. And the groundwork is already laid. We have political level engagements when PM Modi and Swedish King had signed MOUs on polar science and maritime sphere. On diplomatic side, we have had a lot of foreign office consultations between India and Sweden. We have discussed a lot of the topics on R&D, sustainability, investments. The two countries are looking for a lot of, as Honorable Charles Fair also mentioned, that we are looking for green energy, semiconductors, and AI, and batteries, and new technologies. So in a way, we have had a lot of engagements at that level. Also at the military level, we have Indian naval ship visiting Sweden last year, and we had this camaraderie naval exercises between the two countries. So basically, the foundation is there. Against this backdrop, I have three arguments now. First of all, India and Sweden has to shift their vision of how they want to define their position in maritime domain in Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific. And I use these two words separately. Indo-Pacific is a larger geostrategic domain, whereas Indian Ocean region is a subset of it. And this is a very clear definitional or a strategic difference I would want to make, because these two zones, geostrategic zones, bring their different sets of interests and challenges as well. So it's understandable from Sweden's point of view that why the shift has come from transatlantic to Indo-Pacific now. There are economic reasons. The European economy is facing challenges. The exports have gone down. So that is one of the reasons. But also mostly there is this influence of other countries such as China within the geostrategic affairs, within the geopolitical affairs, which is also making Sweden to make larger presence in regions beyond transatlantic. In this regard, if I talk about if Indo-Pacific, and because Sweden has its Indo-Pacific strategy, it is very much focused. Indo-Pacific is a region where we also seeing a lot of geopolitical conflicts in terms of great power rivalry between US and China. The countries are seeing a lot more issues of self-help to safeguard themselves from the territorial invasions that countries like China are doing. And therefore, there is an increase in military budget in across Indo-Pacific nations. Either countries are buying new technologies or they're developing their own technologies. And there's a growing trend of military bolstering in entire Indo-Pacific. And within that subset, we are talking about Indian Ocean region countries, IOR countries, which are countries which are developing countries which have more existential issues. Most of their issues are connected to their maritime domain, and they're looking for development. They're looking for infrastructure related development, green technologies, innovation, education, science and technology. So their issues are very existential and very different from what Indo-Pacific countries are looking. So this is first difference I would want to bring, that if Sweden is looking at Indian Ocean region, the maritime domain, it has to have a more nuanced approach as to how it sees Indo-Pacific and how it sees Indian Ocean region. And the strategies have to flow from there on. The requirements of these two geostrategic regions are quite different. That was first point. Second point is the normative approach. As previous speakers have also mentioned, that Sweden's maritime approach is very essentially humanitarian, it's social, environmental, economic development. And all these developments are coming at, if you find the convergence of these sectors in maritime domain. Sweden is already established in its fisheries and shipping, tourism, offshore energy, aquaculture, and so many industries. Similarly, it is also looking for green transport, as the previous speaker also mentioned, that green transport at green ports, green shipping lines. Sweden has already established, as other Nordic countries have established these technologies. Similarly, India too has a very normative approach towards the maritime domain, and most of you must be aware about India's Sagar approach, security and growth for the region, and which has a very much sustainable development approach which aligns with the regional aspirations. In this regard, Sweden and India have this commonality in their normative approach, and this is something that these two countries can come together and develop, and whether we speak about transport or marine research and development, clean energy, port and ships, tourism industry. There are huge range of industries which are available to us in the maritime domain where these countries can look. And my third large point is, while Sweden is very much concerned about the Indo-Pacific challenges, and it has participated in some of exercises like anti-piracy exercises throughout Atlanta in the region, I would argue that there are more efforts that India and Sweden can put, because there are more avenues for capacity building and capability enhancement for not only for India, for the regional countries to counter these threats by themselves. So capacity building would be one more area. So in this regard, there are 5-6 verticals that I can just take a minute and explain. First would be defense cooperation. India and Sweden has had a long defense cooperation, and we invite a lot of FDIs as well. Though there are challenges, and everyone is aware of that Indian defense industry has already established set of defense partners, and we have our own specificities in terms of defense requirements, and there are some bureaucratic delays. These can be overcome, and these can be overcome by Sweden by providing maybe newer and low-cost technologies, cost-effective platforms, joint manufacturing of defense-related equipments, mostly in the maritime domain, and which is the time of the need of the hour as well. Second, I would talk about the maritime domain awareness, undersea domain awareness. As we understand that maritime is a huge domain and no country alone can take care of it. Having a constant watch, having a constant know-how of the seas is very important, and maritime domain awareness allows it. But it is a hugely resource-intensive, capital-intensive task, and a lot of technologies are required in that sense. So given that both countries have established industries for AI, quantum computing, and newer technologies, I think maritime domain again provides a avenue for where both the countries can come together in terms of knowledge sharing, best practices, and maybe jointly develop certain technology which can assist MDA. Next would be the resilient coastal infrastructure. We understand that Nordic countries and Sweden specifically have these immense infrastructure which are resilient to any kind of natural disaster. And most of the Indian Ocean countries are facing a lot of natural disasters, and we lose lives and property each year for worth billions of dollars. And it would be, if human rights and human development is one of the Nordic countries' main aspiration, I think it would be worth considering if Sweden and India can collaborate in these areas where we can build disaster resilient infrastructure. India already has CDRI as an institution where it is promoting the disaster resilience infrastructure for the region. And we are hoping more and more countries join with their expertise and their resources to make it more successful. Fourth area, I would talk about marine research and scientific research for capacity building. And this is a huge area of, where we can find collaboration, because having a whole old tradition of maritime, related research in Sweden and Nordic countries mostly, there are wonderful leading institutions in which are dealing with marine sciences and several marine-related advanced research facilities. How about thinking more collaboration on the academic front here, and in where India and Sweden and Northern countries can come together in terms of academic collaboration, research collaboration between scholars, officers, researchers, and who can study different aspects of maritime projects. Then there is shipbuilding, and India and seeking a huge development in their program, in the shipbuilding program. And on the other hand, Sweden already has established these programs. We have green shipping and green transportation already working. This is another area where India and Sweden can collaborate. And lastly, I would close with Arctic cooperation. India is a observer member in Arctic, and India has this interest because it impacts our own Himalayan third pole environment and regional environment in general. So more and more research for us is required to understand how Himalayas impact our temperatures, our sea waters, and global regional environment as such. So in this regard, Nordic countries can support India's own research programs within Arctic region. So to conclude, I would say we have reached a position where India and Sweden are talking like partners, equal partners. There are huge avenues to explore. We have had a fair share of initial conversation, but I think now it's a time to chalk out the working agendas, working plans to take these ideas further. And I hope some of the ideas which I provided just now might help in taking some of those conversations further. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
There is a huge prospects to advance India-Sweden defense and security ties. We will come back to you with more questions and comments, but I would also take this opportunity to invite all of our participants, those who are joining this webinar and listening to the experts here. They could ask their questions through the Q&A box. Please write your questions very objectively, straightforward manner, so that we could direct it to the respective speakers to address those questions. I could see already there is a question, so we'll come back to those questions. But let me now open the floor for discussion. Probably I would first pose a questions to both Ambassador Bargo and Ms. Becker to you by saying that, you both highlighted about the previous and the current state of affairs between Sweden and India. We would, since you both are from Sweden, we would like to know what needs to be done in order to advance India's perception in Sweden as a power, as a partner, and also as a effective multilateral partner in the EU framework. What Sweden can do in order to correct or improve or strengthen India's impression as a power, as a partner, both in the Nordic region as well as in the EU framework. Maybe Ambassador Bargo and you, Ms. Baker, you could answer. To Dr. Pooja, to you, I think, again, interesting presentation. What do you think, since you are from India and you are looking at more at the maritime and security aspects, in your opinion, what are those couple of 2-3 points that you would suggest that probably in India we should do in order to put Sweden in a higher bracket in terms of strengthen about seeing Sweden much more in a positive light, and to strengthen that perception about Sweden among a leading country from not only from the Nordic but also from the EU framework. And where do you see that this perception could be strengthened, particularly in the security and maritime domain? Then we'll go back to the questions that is being asked by our participants here. So each one of you have 2 minutes to answer this question. Ambassador Bargo, over to you.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I think that knowledge is the prime is of prime importance, and in order to increase knowledge both in India of Sweden and in Sweden of India, you need more academics, you need more resources spent in universities on, for instance, in Sweden on programs focusing on India. Then I think that we should underline in various ways, in articles, in seminars, in international fora, the values that we share and that bind us together, without recognizing or without knowing that we share important values. It's also very difficult to realize that we should cooperate vis-a-vis the challenges that we and others have. So underlining that we need to spend more resources on education, and we need to repeat again and again and again the importance that we put on certain values, be they human values or be them trade values, multilateral structural values, and so forth. It just needs to be more of the same, and I don't think there's one quick fix. It's simply that we have to do a lot of things all together.
I agree with you. It is education and knowledge, and it is from both sides. I have been, for example, in Gujarat, and it was 300-400 people there in the audience, and they said, "Fantastic that you're here from Sweden, but can you tell us what Sweden is known for?" They love us, but they don't really know the details. And on the other hand, it's the same in Sweden. So we are the same. I think we should know each other very much more in business, in culture. We really love India here in Sweden. You know, many of us do yoga, and we love Indian food and so on too. But maybe you should know a little bit more about us in Sweden too. I know that IKEA in India are selling the food, the Swedish food, more than anything. So at least you like some of your meatballs and so on. So there we also could do the change. I love what our clothes company H&M have done, where they have created new totally new brand or election with Indian designer, but Swedish brand. Can you imagine to mix that together? It's amazing. I love it. What I also would like to discuss that we have not mentioned here, I have started to discuss this with the people in Sweden, tourism.
Good.
Because when I have been in India, I have met some of you being the largest Indian tourist companies, and they said to me, you know, we have so good relation in EU, London, Great Britain for a long time, but Sweden is a black spot. We don't know anybody. Nobody's here to promote themselves. Nobody tells what you exist. We have heard that you have an ice hotel. We have heard that you have the Nordic Lights, but we don't know it, and we have not been there. And you know, from tourists, it creates business and investments too. Because normally you go to a place, you like the people, you like the place, then you come back and then you start to do the rest.
Right. Thank you. That was excellent. Dr. Pooja, over to you.
Thank you for that question. I think most of the points have been covered by Ambassador and my previous speaker as well. How we say that familiarity begets contempt, I think in our case, it's unfamiliarity that begets contempt. I think we both don't need to know each other, India and Sweden, as cultures, mostly. So it's not that India is not aware of Swedish brands, Sweden's companies, and they are very famous in India. H&M and IKEA has opened its new store in New Delhi just last week. So we are very much aware of the technology. We are not aware of the people, and I think that goes to the same that Swedish people are not aware of India and why Indians will eat vegetarian food and why they will take bath first and then before they touch anything in the house. That goes to cultural understanding. I think a lot more Nordic countries and Sweden has to understand that if India is such a culturally rich country, there has to be a rich history about it. And I think more and more tourism will help us, the European countries to understand India. I think we have a lot of European tourists coming to India. And once they come to India, they realize our way of doing things and seeing things, and they transform completely about their ideas about Indian culture. So first is more tourism is required, more visibility of each other's culture is required. And second is, of course, education. I cannot stress it enough because most of Indian students will either go to US or, UK for the education, now Australia. I don't think a lot of Nordic universities invite Indian students and vice versa as well as in India. I think it's a huge area where we can have these kind of collaborations. So these would be two major areas I can think on top of my head to start with at least.
Thank you, and I think I do agree with all of you that we need much more collaborations in terms of education, knowledge building, exchange of informations, and knowledge sharing, particularly also to enhance tourism. We have some interesting questions by the participants. Let me start with you in the reverse order, Dr. Pooja. There is a question from Athens D.N. Richards. He is asking, what are the Chinese moves that Indo-Pacific cooperation between Sweden and India would specifically combat? Then he's asking, how would Sweden's involvement really be an important variable given its size? Do you think that both India and Sweden are in a position to combat or counter some of the initiatives that the Chinese are taking in Indo-Pacific? Is it a practical, proposition, or do you think it's still possible? If it's possible, at what level it is possible? If you could comment on this.
Thank you, Ethan, for that question. I think one of there are 2-3 major challenges that China is posing for Indian Ocean. First is the kind of debt ridden port development that is going on. Countries in this region are seeking development for their ports for increasing their exports, and just because no other country is trying to help them in port development and investments and R&D, I think they are going to China, and China is more than happy to help them. And our region is now surrounded with Chinese funded port infrastructure, which I don't think any country wants to happily take in, but they have no other option. Second is the kind of doubtful ways of research that China has been doing through its research vessel and undersea UUVs. And that's very doubtful that it's actually doing research or it's a purpose of espionage. Nobody has the clear answers, but the kind of vessels which are coming to Indian Ocean region are very, very suspicious in that regard. So in this sense, when this kind of doubtful MDA is there, maritime domain awareness is there, and that's why I brought about this point that we need to have more and better maritime domain awareness for the region. And that is where the India-Sweden collaboration in AI and technologies in the maritime domain is important. The port and infrastructure development is important. The green energy and technologies which are required for these port developments and clean energies, that is important. So I think they all come together for the common cause in the region if they come, both the countries come together.
And maybe three of you could comment whatever you feel like commenting. There is a question that which third country in Indo-Pacific can become a partner with India and Sweden in terms of maritime cooperation? Do you think there is a prospect that India and Sweden could collaborate with a third country in Indo-Pacific in the area of maritime collaborations? That is one of the questions. Then there is a question that what are the future geopolitical challenges that could function as a test for India-Sweden cooperation? Maybe Ambassador Barco, you would like to answer this, given your rich experience. You have served in East Asia for a large number of years, and you have been to many sensitive countries. What are the geopolitical changes you could foresee that both India and Sweden could see not only for themselves individually, but also as a partner? Then there is a question that, again, Ethan is asking that are increasing India-Sweden ties is a symptom of a world heading towards multipolarity? And if so, what would have made the relationship less likely in the past? Maybe again, this question could be answered by three of you, by Mr. Barco or Ms. Baker or you, Dr. Pooja. So essentially, the participants wants to know that how do you really frame India-Sweden relationship in the context of current world politics? Do you see the way the partnership is emerging? It's a part of a multipolar structure, and there is a multipolarity exist. So how do you see India-Sweden relationship evolving? So over to you first, Ambassador Barco.
Very good questions. Well, let me take an example of the necessity to act now and to act with some urgency. Recently, the Chinese Navy performed some live fire exercises in the Tasman Sea between Australia and New Zealand, and without notifying the countries involved. And this type of behavior can be interpreted in no other way than that they would like to send the signal that they are able to act wherever, whenever, and however. And so I think presence of maritime, of naval ships is important. Sorry. One needs also to, for the Swedish side, we need to identify what organizations or which organizations and where in cooperation with others do we do the most effective work. Do we join other NATO countries in sending patrol ships through the Taiwan Strait, or do we in somehow cooperate with the Quad countries? Do we somehow join certain structures that and this goes for India also? I think that what structures can we identify to be the most efficient and important important in meeting, for instance, the Chinese challenge. And we also realize, when I was ambassador to Japan, I was also ambassador to Palau, Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands. And we also need to recognize that for instance, a completely different subject, but the rising sea levels is a real threat to the Pacific island countries. And there we could do more together. So there are many different ways to work in order to solve common problems. But one of the most important elements is that we have to be there. We have to show ourselves interested and act interested and be interested. And we cannot do it alone. We need to cooperate with others and identify what organizations do we cooperate most efficiently with.
Yeah, I think that everything between Sweden and India will change the next 5 years. Very, very strong relations. And it is because of the geopolitical situation as one reason why. I think everybody today know what is happening, and everybody's thinking what will happen next, you know? Who should we be with, who share our values, what can we work with, and so on. We have, a very dangerous situation in the world will make it even more unstable. What I can see from the Swedish side, but also from the Indian side, is that now we will really see what friendship is about. Because now we'll be tested, all of us will be tested to see what is real, what is not real, what is serious, what is not serious. And also, if you look at it from the Swedish side, we understand the potential of India more and more. You are growing extremely fast in the world. You are friends with many of the countries, almost all of them, very close relation with, but you also have a growth of almost 10%, 8 to 10%. The new Silicon Valley of the world is based in Bangalore. So I think that we more and more understand that we need India. But I believe also that we can contribute very much on the other side to India too. And what I also would like to say, you were mentioned defense earlier. And I know that India have asked us for a long time to have cooperation in defense to the Swedish, from the Swedish side to India. Because we are scaling up now very much in NATO, it is a golden opportunity also for Indian companies to be established in the Nordics and Sweden.
Thank
So
you.
we have a golden opportunity.
Right. Right. No, I could see that positive momentum which is building between India and Sweden. And I do agree with you that the next 5 years is going to be very critical. Dr. Pooja, over to you.
Thank you. I think I'll take the second question about multilateralism first, that why are we heading to a new kind of multilateralism? I think there is a growing fatigue amongst the larger world. And as a scholar of strategic affairs, I can see this fatigue coming amongst middle power countries and other countries who are not great powers. They're tired of the great power politics and taking sides, and you never know. There is no predictability in this kind of situation. So now every other country is looking for new partners which are more reliable, which are more transparent, and I think that is being one of the foundations for what we are calling the new kind of multilateralism, and that's why India and Sweden and Asia in particular, Indo-Pacific in particular, is so much of matter of interest for the rest of the world, because we provide the demography, we provide the markets, we provide the vibrant, end product markets for both unfinished products and the markets for finished products. So we are a matter of interest for so many countries across the world, and so many countries across the world want to be a part of Indo-Pacific. So I think we are shifting to a new era of multilateralism, where we might not involve the great powers and have their own equations with each other. Now coming to the first part of the question of which other countries would want to be a third party to India and Sweden partnership. I think coming from the first question, there are many countries who are interested in Indo-Pacific affairs, and they bring with them different kind of strengths, such as UAE brings the investments with it. If you talk about France, they bring technologies with them. If you talk about Australia, they bring military power with. So each country, and also the matter of ecology. Australia is very strong in the in the issues of marine ecology and marine environment. So I think each of these countries have different strength. India and Sweden therefore have to find which pillars they want to build, and accordingly which partner they need to pick. I think I leave it that.
Thank you. I think that was excellent. Let me read some of the other questions that we have from the participants, and then I will, invite my colleagues here who are listening very patiently, maybe to ask one-on-one questions to the speakers. There is a question from Ethan again. Can you please elaborate on Dr. Nicholas Sundstrom's remarks about how an isolationist US and isolationist China are directly affecting India-Sweden ties? Ethan, of course, Dr. Sundstrom is not there, but I could take this opportunity to share with you is that please look at ISDP website for the next 2 days. We're going to publish 2 policy briefs, part of this project. Tomorrow, the first policy brief will be coming up, and those 2 policy briefs are covering some of these questions that you are raising. These 2 policy briefs are co-authored by Dr. Nicholas Sundstrom, myself, and Associated Fellow Ms. Mahima Dugal. But very briefly, I think the kind of trend we are seeing, US withdrawing from most of the multilateral forums in the global affairs, and China facing the losing the face in the European framework, that itself makes them as isolationist powers in the global arena today. So in that context, I think emerging powers like India, which is really making its voice stand today under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi in Indo-Pacific, Sweden, which is also making its voice counted at the EU and at the transatlantic level after joining NATO. There is a lot of convergence, direct convergence can happen, and collaboration can take forward. This collaboration can happen at the bilateral level as well as at the multilateral level. But in order to understand the details of it, I would invite you to read those 2 policy briefs that we'll be publishing very soon in our website. There are further questions. There is a questions, in fact, there is a comments from Miss Mariana from Lund University. She's saying, thank you for your presentation. Many aspects have been already heightened. Should not some more be added? I have very fruitful collaboration with Indian researchers, both regarding the Middle East and Central Asia. We compare our different perspective and analysis there. This is an additional way for better mutual understanding. So Global South, BRICS, all of these areas could be a point of discussion between India and Sweden. They may not be the direct multilateral forum for collaborations, but it could be a point of discussion between India and Sweden. Those 2 countries, India and Sweden, as democratic powers, as resilient powers, and powers as transparent powers in global affairs, they could actually discuss some of these critical issues. I completely agree with you, Mariana. Then I would invite my colleagues here, Maria and Toby, to ask if they have any questions to our presenters.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Ms. Baker. And you were talking about non-governmental organizations. Talking about NGOs, what role do you think they can play in strengthening relations between India and Sweden, particularly?
I think they should have the possibility to do very, very much good things, because NGOs, they are creating from the heart and from the people on the floor, And if you have something that you want to change, you can imagine we are only 12 million people in Sweden, and we are very good in NGOs. We have maybe most NGOs per capita in the world. You can imagine the power, and I know you already are good in that in India, but you can imagine if we start that movement with some special issues in India, together with Sweden, we can together change both countries, but not only that, the whole world.
Thank you.
Tommy?
This is more for Dr. Pooja Bhatt. How can there be deeper cooperation between India and Sweden in the Indo-Pacific? Are there underexplored forums that could be utilized to achieve deeper maritime cooperation, or perhaps diplomatic channels, initiatives, etc.?
Sorry, would you repeat the question, please?
Are there underexplored forums or alliances or initiatives, etc., to deepen India-Sweden cooperation in the Indo-Pacific?
So if I could reframe the question, he's asking what are the underexplored areas, or are there any new areas where India and Sweden could deepen their collaboration in Indo-Pacific?
I think most of the underexplored areas have been already highlighted by the governments of both the countries, and we're already speaking on the similar lines. We have found our complementarities, and I think which is very important in a bilateral relation. And that's why I said that we are not talking about everything under the sky between the two countries. We have figured out that we want AI, technology, green energy. So there are certain pillars we've already identified, and I think at all the levels, as I already mentioned in my presentation, that we have our engagement at political level, diplomatic level, military level, academic level. So I think we've started exploring more of the regions. The problem here at the moment is we need to still start working on those ideas. We have the larger ideas where we want to work, but they have to translate on the ground from the paper. And I think those are the areas we need to figure out at the moment, that where all we can work together, bypassing bureaucracy, bypassing the old issues that we've already had over the ages. And once we transcend that, I think we can move forward in the relationship, and that's what we are looking for the next decade.
Yeah, I think I do agree. Identification of areas would not really be the only a good area to work on. Identification and then executing into an action plan to force forward this collaboration in Indo-Pacific should be our motto and target. Dr. Pooja, one more questions from my participants before we end, because we are already shortage of time. Quickly, there is a question. In August 2023, the Ministry of Natural Resources of China released a new version of their official map, adding a 10th line around Taiwan. As an expert on this topic, how do you think India and Sweden should respond to such actions of China? Either collectively or individually, how India and Sweden should look at this? Are there unexplored partnerships and forums to have some kind of understanding between India and Sweden?
I think that's a complicated question, excellent question, but complicated answer. What China has done is it's a domestic issue, first of all. They've tried to release in its domestic ministry and releasing it out for the public and interpret for themselves. So first of all, if that situation of 10th line is impacting rest of the world, I think countries individually at the first level have to take stance and call that thing out, that China cannot unilaterally bring another line without explaining to the rest of the world the method behind it and the idea behind it. I think countries should ask more and more of that question at the individual level, and it would be more beneficial if countries can come together collectively and call it out as a joint statement, which is rather a complicated thing, but still doable. More and more with such events are called out. I think more international pressure would be built on China against doing all this.
Thank you. That is excellent. Mr. Bhalgu, you have anything to add as your final remarks?
Well, yes, we spoke of, or we had questions also of multilateralism and versus bilateralism. And I think that when looking at multilateralism, one has to look at two different fields. One is the existence of multilateral organizations and our participation in those organizations. And the other is more perhaps ad hoc based multilateral cooperation, working together with like-minded countries in meeting challenges that we're all facing. And when it comes to, or the basis for all this, I think, is that multilateralism should underline the importance of a rules-based world order. I don't think that countries, for instance, in the ASEAN countries, are really interested in choosing between a Chinese world order or an American world order. They are interested in having a rules-based order that they can trust and not necessarily have to follow the whims of great powers. So I think the best way of meeting the challenges of today with powers like the United States, Russia, China is to underline the importance of rules that we have all agreed upon and act accordingly in the multilateral organizations.
Thank you, Ambassador Valdo. Any final words from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to give some input about the geopolitical situation that you asked about. I think that we have discussed that for a long time, a new world order, but we are really facing a new world order now. And we don't know where it will end, but I believe that EU will be stronger than ever. It has to be. I think that EU will increase with new countries too because of the situation. I think also that we in the Western world should not be afraid about BRICS. Many countries are going that way, but why can't we work together? On the other hand, I think that a lot of countries should not be afraid that we have NATO either, because I get that question very much from India. Why did you join NATO? It doesn't need to be black and white. Can't we work together and create peace and prosperity instead?
Excellent. Thank you very much, all the three speakers for your insightful remarks today and deliberations today. I think this last 1.5 hours has been really quite engaging. And thank you very much for all those participants who have found time to join. We are happy to have you for this webinar. And also, I take this opportunity to share with all of you that we'll be carrying out this discussion on India-Sweden and India-Nordic engagement for the next 2 days. Please see, tomorrow we will be discussing more about supply chain networks between India and Sweden and India and Nordic. And day after tomorrow, we'll be discussing more about India-Nordic collaborations. So those who are interested, please look at ISDP website, please register and join. You will find a fantastic line of speakers coming tomorrow and day after tomorrow again. With this note, let me also thank here my excellent team from ISDP, Ms. Anna Yarmuth, Ms. Julia, Ms. Maria, and Mr. Toby for their excellent support system and collaborations with the Embassy of India to set up this webinar and for the next couple of webinars. Last but not least, we will be failing in our duty if we don't really thank the Embassy of India here, and particularly His Excellency Sri Tiwari, the Charge d'Affaires at the Embassy of India. Thank you very much, sir, for all of your support, collaborations, and it's been a pleasure, engaging with the Embassy of India. We look forward to not only in terms of research collaboration to take forward, but also in terms of exchanging more ideas between the two knowledge communities in India and Sweden. With this note, let me invite you to have a final word before we conclude the webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Panda, and thank you very much all the speakers and our audience. As we conclude this insightful discussion today, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all speakers and especially Ambassador Lars Valgo and Ms. Lena Baker and Dr. Pooja Bhatt from India for their very valuable and perspective on this evolving India-Sweden partnership. Your thoughts and your perspective really on trade, innovation, sustainability, security have added great depth to our understanding of the opportunities in future ahead. So this dialogue has reinforced the strong foundation of our collaboration and highlighted new avenues for cooperation between India and Sweden. Your expertise and engagement are truly appreciated, and I hope today's discussion will inspire further action in strengthening our partnership for the next decade. Thank you once again for your time and insight. And at last, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Niklas, who really, first I would like to say that today, unfortunately, he's not here, but his guidance, valuable guidance, and everything really inspired to us all. And a special thanks to you for supporting and organizing this event. And again, I would like to extend my a special thanks to Mr. Panda, who wonderfully moderated this session, and he gave a good opportunity to ask questions, to discuss, to interact, and a lot of things. And I also extend my thanks to all the supporting team from ISDP and our supporting team from Indian Embassy, who contributed towards success of this event. So as Pandaji mentioned that there is again 2 events tomorrow and day after tomorrow, and after that there is another event. So I look forward to listening or learning all your insight and your expertise. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all those participants. Please look at ISDP's website. We'll be publishing the recording of this webinar in next few days, and also we'll prepare a report out of this webinar, and also for the next webinars reports we'll be publishing sometimes in a week's time. And also with the collaboration of Embassy of India in Stockholm, ISDP is organizing one-day dialogue on 2nd of April. If you are in Stockholm and interested to join in person, please contact us. Look at our website. You will find the relevant contact address, and please drop us an email so that we could get you in if you verify with your proper address and identification. With this note, again, thank you very much for all of you for joining us today, and have a good week ahead and a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.